This controller is the first one made specifically for the popular FL Studio DAW. We're taking a quick look at the Akai Pro Fire. It's a pad controller that lets you get hands-on with FL Studio's channel rack step sequencers, letting you create drum parts, play bass lines and melodies, and even perform live. In this short talk through, I'll give you an overview of the Fire, what it can do, and our thoughts on it. So let's go. So the Fire has 16x4 backlit RGB pads, arranged to look like FL Studio step sequencer over in its channel rack. The step sequencer interface is what you use to input drum hits, one-shots, and synth notes, and in the past you had to use a mouse and a trackpad in order to do that. Now with the Fire, you just press a pad to add a note or a step, just like this, and you press them again in order to delete. The pads are responsive and they're pretty easy to see once you've entered the step because it lights up. The brighter the pad is, the higher the velocity of that step, and the dimmer it is, the lower the velocity. Now there are transport controls over here on the lower right, including a pattern or song mode selector that lets you switch between FL Studio's two modes. You've also got your rotary, you've got your browse, and your pattern navigation and grid navigation buttons at the top of the unit. Plus, you've got the rotary bank selector over here on the upper left. And finally, on the lower left, you've got the mode buttons, and there are 4 of them: step, node, drum, and perform. And we're going to be talking about them a little bit later on in this video. You can control up to 4 channels at any one time, and if you want to scroll through, let's say you've got like 8, 12, 16, 64 channels even, you can use the scroll knob over here to go through all of them. But right now we've got a really basic project going on. We've only got 4 channels here. We've got a kick, clap, hi-hat, and a snare, and we're going to be adding some steps to them later on. Now, you can also use the rotary knobs here for various purposes depending on which bank you've got selected. By default, it's set to channel, and that means that you can adjust the volume, pan, filter, and the resonance of that specified channel or whichever you've got selected. So let's say right now I am controlling the kick, and I can see that on my screen. It's highlighted by that green rectangle, and if I want to go to the next one, I just hold Alt and I move the selector knob, and I'm not the clap. Now I'm at my hi-hat, I'm at my snare. Of course, you can also use your mouse to just click on the channel that you want to modify. Now, if I press the bank mode over here, and if I go to mixer, that means that I can adjust the volume, pan, the low EQ, and the high EQ of either the master channel, which I can see over here whenever I move a knob. The parameter changes, and you can see it on the OLED display. It's not big, but it certainly is bright enough, so you're going to be able to see this whenever you're performing, which is a good thing. Would have been nice if it were in color, but again, it's just a tiny little screen that's supposed to show you what parameter you're tweaking, so it's fine. You can also change the pan of like the master channel, and then I've got the master EQ low and the master EQ high. Now you've got 2 more banks here, user 1 and user 2. Now these are user definable, and you can customize them in order to have the parameters that you want to change over here in the rotary encoders. But for now, let's just use like the default settings. So let's just go back to channel, and then let's move on over to the first mode that the Akai Pro Fire has, which is step mode. Now let's take a look at the pad modes. The first mode is step, and this lets you control FL Studio step sequencer in the channel rack. You can navigate through the different channels by using the select knob over here at the top right of the unit, and you can increase or decrease the length of the step sequence by pressing the grid buttons on the upper right as well. You can mute or solo channels, and you can add steps by pressing the pads. Holding a step pad down while moving a rotary encoder lets you change its parameters, including velocity and panning. So let's try that right now. It's gonna be super easy. I'm just gonna add pads over here. Now, why did I do that? Why didn't I put them one after the other? Well, when you're using a step sequencer like this, all of the pads by default are set to 16th notes, and that's why you've got 16 pads per row. So all of this basically is 1 bar of music. So whenever I hit play, you're gonna hear 1 bar of music playing through, and you'll also see your location or your playhead by this little highlight that goes from the top to the bottom of the grid. So cool, I've got a kick there, and now let's add like a clap. Super easy. Nice. Now let's add some hi-hats. Cool. So now I've got 1 bar of music, and let's say I want to make this pattern a little bit longer. Let's say I want to make it 2 bars. How do I do that? I just press the grid button over here, and you're gonna see like all of the steps that I inputted are deleted, and that means that we are in the second measure or the second bar of music. If you look over here at our screen, just drag it on just like that, and we're going to be able to see that the second bar is currently empty. So let's start populating it with steps. I'm just going to make it pretty similar to the drums that we've already added for the first bar. Add a bit of a variation here. Maybe add a snare. Like that. Cool. Now, let's say like I find the snare to be too loud, which it currently is. So what I'm gonna do is I can use the controls over here on the Fire in order to adjust its volume. So again, just gonna hit Alt, move the selector button, I'll select your knob, and then I'm gonna go down to snare. Now I'm gonna lower the volume. There we go. I just want to sit it at the background. I don't want it to be too upfront. I just want it to be there just so like the second bar of music has a bit of a variation compared to the first one. And another thing that I can do using the Fire is I can also adjust the velocity of the individual steps that I've already added. So let's say I want this snare roll over here to sound a little bit more convincing. I don't want it to sound too static. I can change the velocity just by holding down the pad and by moving the volume knob. Make it softer, just like that. Then make this one just a little bit louder. There we go. And let's say I want to adjust the velocity of 2 pads at the same time. I can just hold them down like this. Then I can move the velocity knob, just like that. It's pretty cool, pretty intuitive, and easy to do. Stop that right now. Cool, now let's talk about note mode. This turns the 16x4 grid into a 3-octave piano that you can use to trigger sounds from an instrument in the channel rack. Let's try it out. So we do that by pressing note, and you're gonna find this new array of colors. So over here, we've got our first octave, and this is our second octave. And over here, this is the mirror of the second octave, and this is the third octave over here. I am going to add an instrument over here in our channel rack. Let's go to Synth Classic. And let's say I want to add a bass line over here. Let's drag that. Cool. And then now if I press a pad, it'll play a note. Now, of course, this is going to depend on the instrument that you've got loaded. If you've loaded like a piano instrument, this is going to sound like a piano. If you've loaded a bass like I have, it's going to sound like a bass, and all that other good stuff. So let's try recording an easy bass line over here, something super, super simple. And what I want to do is I want to record and to trigger the recording using just the Fire controller. I don't want to use my mouse anymore. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to enable a count in. So that means I'm going to get a 1, 2, 3, 4 count before the recording starts. In order to do that, I'm going to hit the shift button and I'll press stop button, which also has the countdown as a shift layer. So when this is flashing, that means I've got a 1, 2, 3, 4 count before the recording starts. Great. And then I'm going to hit the record button. So now this is armed. Whenever I hit play, that means that the recording will begin. Let's do that right now. Okay, so that's it. I'm gonna stop, disarm the track, and let's hear what we've made. Pretty cool. So that's our pattern now. We made that drum loop earlier, and now we've added a bass line to it. If I want to adjust stuff like the volume or the panning, again, I can do that. Just like that. And if I want to move this filter around, I can do that. I want to add some resonance. There you go. So super, super simple. Again, this is going to depend on whatever instrument that you've got loaded. And right now I've got a bass loaded, and that's why it sounded that way. Now let's go to drum mode. It'll turn the left half of the Fire into two groups of 16 pads. You can use drum mode in different ways depending on the layout. For example, in the FPC layout, you can use it to control the FPC drum pad instrument in FL Studio, which has two banks, bank A and bank B. The left pad set controls bank A, and the right pad set controls bank B. And now we've only got half of the grid lit up, and that's because these are basically two different banks of MPC style drum pads. That's why you've only got 16 over here and 16 over here as well. And the layout for this one basically is for the drum machine over here in Fruity Loops, which is called FPC. So for that over here, drag that into our channel rack. And now I can use the pads over here on the left in order to trigger these sounds. So I've got side stick, kick drum, hi-hat, tambourine, and so on. Now for this set of pads, these are for bank B, and currently we don't have any sounds loaded, so we're not gonna hear anything when we do that. But yes, as you can see, I'm triggering the pads over here in bank B. So let's try this. When would you wanna use a drum mode? Well, if you wanna lay down tracks, if you want to lay down like a drum loop, instead of having to use the step sequencer, you can just hit record and play a track. Yeah, so this is nice if you don't want it to sound too robotic. You want it to sound like a human drummer was playing it, or in this case, human fingers were playing it. So that's one way that you're going to be able to use the drum mode. And also, this is pretty cool because you can load some grooves in here. Let's say I want to select this one. Now, whenever I hit play, it's going to have that drum loop going in there. And currently, we're only hearing it for the start because it's only the pattern is only for one bar of music, but you just have to copy and paste this over onto the second one. But basically, that's what drum mode is for. It's for performing with these pads a la using an MPC or like a machina where you've got 16 pads that you can mash along with. So there you go. Now finally, perform mode is for triggering clips, sounds, and loops that you've got stored over in the timeline or in the pattern window over here in Fruity Loops. And it takes a little bit more time because you got to set everything up. But basically, it works like Ableton Live session views. You're able to trigger those clips, those loops, and even those MIDI sounds, and they basically loop indefinitely, and you're able to come up or to trigger those sounds in a live setting. So that's awesome if you want to perform it with FL Studio. Let's say you're like a DJ producer, instead of just spinning the track on like a CDJ or a piece of DJ software, you can open up FL Studio, have the Akai Pro Fire with you, and then you can just trigger them using that. So I think that's pretty awesome. The Akai Pro Fire is a decent controller for FL Studio enthusiasts, although those who are new to the DAW may find it challenging learning both FL Studio and using Fire at the same time. And for this reason, we recommend that beginners learn using FL Studio on its own first. You'd be surprised at just how much producing can be done with a mouse and keyboard, and maybe a piano keyboard controller as well, which is kind of how FL Studio users have been doing it for years. If you're already using FL Studio and you just love the idea of using a step sequencer to add notes and to use the pads in note mode, then the Fire is definitely something that you should check out, especially if you'd like to explore the performance options that using the Fire gives you. Overall, it is a solid, dedicated controller for intermediate FL Studio users. So that's it for the short talk through of the Akai Pro Fire. I've got the full detailed review over at the Digital DJ Tips site. The link is in the description box below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now get good, get out there, and make the moments.